Improving visits for families is vital. It's up to us as an agency to make sure that families have the best experience. First of all, it's a very unnatural atmosphere that we ask families to go into when we ask them to come to a visit. So it's important that we do all we can do to make that as natural feeling as possible. One of the first things that we can do is to be present for a family. So many times we're so consumed with other things. We have documentation that's due, we have court orders that are being processed, we have meetings that we need to attend, not to mention all the other casework that needs to get done. It's easy to use that time when we're having visits and we're supervising those visits as time to get other things done. So we come into a visit with an armload of paperwork and we sit it beside our chair and we begin to whittle on that while we're watching the visit. Families pay attention to that. If we fail to make that connection and be present, then the relationship is going to be missing. It's important that families see us as an advocate for them in these visits and that we're there for them to help build that relationship. So by building the relationship, we set the stage for everything else to occur more naturally and to support that family through this very unnatural process of visiting inside of an agency. First of all, we need to realize as agencies that no amount of visitation we could do under any circumstances will ever replace living together. I think it's important that we go into visits knowing and realizing that. And with that said, there are some parameters around recommendations that we could use to help us guide the process. First of all, for infants and preschoolers, it's really important that we recognize that a 2-hour visit once a week really isn't going to help as much as very short visits that we might have multiple times each week. The reason for these shorter visits for preschoolers and infants is that the attention span in our development is not there to maintain focus for long periods of time. So it's important that we structure visits in a way that they get the most out of a visit. It's not unusual that I see parents come into visits and with an infant, maybe 30 minutes in, the infant's asleep and stays asleep for the rest of the visit. So that's not the most helpful way for them to spend time together if we're trying to help that child build bonds and have facial recognition and voice recognition. So keeping those visits short and doing them multiple times a week in that age range would be recommended. For school-age children, they do still need the multiple visits each week, but they also can go a little bit longer and we can make the visits a little bit longer. So an hour visit for those kids, and it's going to be completely dependent on what you're doing. If you're engaged in a fun activity that happens to last an hour, well, that kid's going to stay engaged with you the whole time. But if you're just sitting inside of an agency room and you're playing a game or reading a book, it can be hard for school-age kids to stay focused and calm for that amount of time. So still a little bit shorter, but you can increase the length of that visit. Now for our adolescents, it does become a bit different for them because they have already built their attachment. The bonds are already there, we hope, and so it's really more about reinforcing for them the attachment that has already occurred. So visits for them can be much longer and they can occur less frequently. And when I say less frequently, we're still talking about visits that need to occur each week, but they can go for a longer period of time between visits because they're not building facial recognition, they're not building voice recognition like an infant. Parks, playgrounds, restaurants, malls, even grocery stores, and of course Walmart is never a bad place for us to have a visit. I suggest that when possible, look outside of the agency. So many times our agencies simply don't have the things that make it family-centered. The toys may be old and tattered or appear dirty. The walls may be painted gray and the carpet a bit dirty. It just doesn't feel like a natural setting. Families go outside and play at home, and it's important that we provide them that opportunity in visits as well. One of the things that I always encourage is pet visits, and I know that may sound a bit strange, but sometimes children are very, very close to their favorite dog, and if the dog is appropriate and it's safe and you can find a location in your city or town to visit, like a park, it can be very, very good for that child to feel that connection back to something that they loved so much that they may not be able to have inside of the foster home.